Chicago Tonight, Black Voices is made possible in part by Fifth Third Bank and by the support of these donors.
At Fifth Third, we believe when diverse voices are heard and empowered, communities are made stronger, lives are made better, and the future holds greater promise for all. That's why we're proud to support Chicago Tonight Black Voices. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can drive change.
Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight Black Voices. I'm Angel Ito. Brandis Friedman has the evening off. Thanks for sharing a part of your weekend with us. On this holiday edition of the program, we share some recent stories of interest and importance. A local author reflects on the bonds of family and friendship and growing up in Chicago in her new book. Black hair has been politicized, penalized, and legislated throughout history. We hear about the history and present-day controversies.
We want to be represented in this lifestyle too. So that's why Black People Outside exists.
Meet two travel enthusiasts who are using TikTok to encourage Black people to explore the outdoors.
It documents the history of the South Side.
And preserving Chicago's Black culture through art and fashion. But first tonight, to a recent conversation Brandis Friedman had with a local writer about her compelling personal story. Here's Brandis Friedman.
Journalist and author Dawn Turner has been writing about race, politics, and people her whole career. But in her new book, she turns her pen inward. In our latest Black Voices Book Club selection, we look at Turner's reflections on her own life's path and how it diverged from the lives of the two girls she grew up closest to, her sister Kim and her best friend Deborah. The book is called Three Girls from Bronzeville, a uniquely American memoir of race, fate, and sisterhood. And author Dawn Turner joins us now to talk about it. Dawn, welcome back to Chicago Tonight.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
So the three girls that you write about, of course, are you, your sister Kim, and your childhood best friend Deborah, and it follows the three of you through your very divergent paths. Your sister was born when you were 3. Can you tell us a little bit about Kim and your family?
Oh, absolutely. When my parents brought her home from the very moment, she was a mystery to me. Headstrong, fearless, and stubborn. And my mother would say, that little girl's not afraid of anything, and that scares me. She was the one who challenged my parents from the beginning to the end. And I was the kid who I was not perfect, but I was much more quiet. And so we were very different in that regard. And then she was, yes.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, she was just always on the move, and that was just her personality.
And then, of course, you became friends with Deborah later on when you were 8. Would you say that the two of you were an unlikely pair?
Absolutely. She had very much the same qualities as my sister. I would always say that Deborah and I were best friends, but Kim and Deborah were soulmates. And the things that I did not admire in my little sister, because she was my sister, I loved in Deborah. She also trafficked in trouble, headstrong, challenged the teachers. For me, rules were scaffolding. And for them, they were just something that they wanted to push out of the way. And really, it's that whole notion about opposites attracting, and that absolutely, that dynamic is present in both of us.
Of course.
All of them.
In all of us. Of course, the fourth character in the title is Bronzeville itself, especially the private lawless gardens apartments where you lived and the nearby Ida B. Wells public housing. What role do you think, these buildings and these neighborhoods play in your lives as well as the lives of Kim and Deborah?
Oh, absolutely. This was our community. Was Bronzeville, first of all, was the cradle of the Great Migration. And our community was kind of in the middle. So there was Lake Meadows to the north of us, the Lake Meadows apartments to the north of us, which was for the Black elite. Judges and lawyers and politicians lived there. And as you just mentioned, the Ida B. Wells homes was in its heyday. It was a beautiful and just a beautiful and forward-thinking place, a haven. And it was supposed to be the answer to the awful tenements that the people who had come up from the Great Migration, during the Great Migration, they had to live in these horrible places. And Ida B. Wells was supposed to be the answer to that. And it, after a while, the city abandoned it, and it became a place where the conditions were deplorable. So we were in the middle. It was privately, Lawless Gardens was privately owned, but we were working class people with middle class aspirations. And so you had this tension between between the Ida B. Wells homes and Lawless. But it was kind of a perceived. There were these perceived differences because we were all just people who were striving, but under very different conditions.
And during your time as a columnist at the Tribune, you wrote about Deborah's time in prison. And I don't think I'm giving anything away in the book here. Obviously,
No.
it'll all be there. And her return to college while she was in prison. What was it like, writing about a friend as she, writing about her story as it's happening?
Well, in 2000, I wrote about her for the first time, and that's when she was sentenced for 50 years in prison, convicted of murder. And then I wrote about her a couple of years later, just kind of a follow-up. And I realized those stories were very much a cautionary tale type story. But then when I wrote about her in 2007, she had graduated with honors, summa cum laude, and while in prison, graduated from college. It was something that she had struggled to do while she was on the outside. And that story resonated. I got letters from people all over the world, all over the country, actually, emails, letters. And because that story was a story about redemption and transformation. And I think we really, we admire those types of stories. We love the whole narrative of people who are able to change their lives. And that for Deborah and her prison experience, which I think is unfortunately a little rare in that she was able to do that in prison.
Right. She and the women who graduated with her are certainly the exception in prison. I also imagine it was painful for you to write about your sister, both your friend, but of course your sister Kim, who died so young. Was all of this therapeutic for you?
I had never written about Kim before. In fact, when I started to think about this as being a book, I thought it was about two girls, it was about Deborah and me, two girls who had taken two spectacularly different paths. But then when I started writing the proposal and I started showing it to people, then my sister, who very much her personality, left off the page, and it became a story about three girls. And yes, it is. I would not say that it's a story that has brought me complete closure, but it definitely has. I've got a chance to do research and talk to people and learn things I didn't know about them or myself. And it was just an amazing experience. And I will continue to write the types of stories, other stories that I write that have been an offshoot of, the two of them being in my life. But I think that this story, I get to put it to bed now.
Put it to bed, as the writers say. That's a good place to leave it, to get folks interested in the book as well. If they want to know more, they got to read it. But we're going to leave it there for now. Dawn Turner, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Again, the book is called Three Girls from Bronzeville, a uniquely American memoir of race, fate, and sisterhood. There's more Chicago Tonight Black Voices right after this.
Don't miss one of our stories. Get them all delivered to your desktop or mobile device with a subscription to the WTTW News Daily Briefing. Go to WTTW.com/daily briefing and sign up.
The subject of Black hairstyles has been discussed and debated for decades, and this year it's been addressed by the Illinois General Assembly. Here's Brandis Friedman in a conversation from this spring about the subject. We should note that since the story first aired, the bill they discuss has been signed into law.
Black Americans across the country are familiar with the rules that have been imposed on their hair throughout history. Styles traditionally associated with natural black hair like locks, braids, twists, and afros have been called everything from distracting to unprofessional in schools and workplaces, leaving many Black Americans feeling pressured to style their hair in ways that conform with Eurocentric ideals. Now, a bill recently passed in the Illinois Senate aims to address Black hair discrimination in schools across the state. Joining us now with more are Patrice Grell-Yursik, writer and creator of the beauty blog Afrobella; Ava Thompson Greenwell, filmmaker, journalist, and professor at Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism; and State Senator Mike Simmons, who introduced the bill and whose district includes neighborhoods on Chicago's far north side. All three of you, welcome back to Chicago Tonight, and thanks for joining us. So, Senator Simmons, let's start with you, please. What inspired you to propose this bill?
I've read so many stories in the last year or so of Black youth who have been traumatized by being forced to take out natural hairstyles such as the style that I wear, dreads, freeform locks, braids. And the tipping point for me is when I read about Chet Hawkins, who's a 4-year-old on the west side of Chicago, who was excited to go to school, was excited about his new braids. His mom took him to school and he was forced to take out his braids, and it was a story about it in late March. I read that and said, I have got to take action on this. We need some legislation. We've got to turn the page on this history.
Ava Thompson Greenwell, you've written about discrimination against Black hair in the workplace, especially for Black women. What does that look like?
So, there's a real history behind that, particularly in television news where image tends to be everything. And so we have Melva Toliver, who back in 1971 wore her hair in an afro and was told, you don't look feminine, change your hairstyle. And she was defiant in that way, in that she decided that she was going to keep her hair the way it was. And so she was supposed to be covering a story on Richard Nixon's daughter's wedding and decided that she was going to wear her afro. And they said, no, you can't. And they actually deleted her portion. And so we have come a long way, certainly since the 1970s, but we still have a ways to go, I think. And it starts certainly with children being able to be themselves fully in school. So I'm very happy to hear about this legislation from Senator Simmons.
And you've even written about some more modern day instances, or similar, not quite the same thing, but modern day instances that still happens to, like you said, to some TV news reporters. Patrice Grell-Yursik, there is more legislation on the horizon regarding Black hair. What would something like the Crown Act mean?
So the Crown Act stands for creating a respectful and open world for natural hair. It's been passed in California in 2019. 7 states have passed similar laws. And it means, a protection for us to not be discriminated against in the workplace and in schools. It's so important what Senator Simmons is introducing, and to see acts like this enacted across the country to protect our rights.
And Senator Simmons, how would this bill work?
So the bill, SB 817, would prohibit schools from including any discriminatory language on hairstyles traditionally associated with race and ethnicity, i.e. People whose hair is of African descent. So specifically, the legislation says that you cannot discriminate against dreads, braids, afros, and protective hairstyles. So the enforcement strategy here is once a year, the Illinois State Board of Education will do a compliance audit of all schools in the state, and the handbooks will have to remove any language that would, say that you can't have those kind of hairstyles. And if they're not in compliance, then there would be consequences. The schools could potentially even lose their recognition by the State Board of Education.
And Senator Simmons, you've said that this is something you've experienced personally as well. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's a kind of a chronic thing I've experienced more so in my earlier years when I was a teenager. There was just always, the sense from authority figures, school settings, places like that, I would hear little random comments about my hair. I ran track and field. I remember I did it a lot from my people on the team, and the coach would just say the most inappropriate things. And back then, I kind of knew it wasn't right. I felt like a boundary was being crossed, but I didn't really have the language to name it. And I just want to say that, a big part of what I'm trying to do with this legislation, this is also about mental health, right? The pandemic has already besieged our youth to such a degree. The last thing we need to do is be policing hairstyles. We have much bigger fish to fry. And so, I know what it feels like to have authority figures humiliate and belittle you in front of your peers. As an adult, frankly, I've had instances where other adults have made inappropriate comments you know, or they'll reach out and they'll even touch one of my locks, which is entirely inappropriate. I always say if their mothers saw them doing that, their mothers would cringe. And that for me is usually the litmus test on that type of behavior and how unacceptable it is. And I don't know that any DEI consulting or cultural sensitivity is going to really fix that, right? If your mom would see that and say that and be embarrassed of that behavior, then that's a pretty obvious line that we shouldn't cross.
I think everybody in this conversation can relate to that experience. Ava, you know, black hair, you know, has a political and a cultural history, obviously. Can you give us some examples of that historical discrimination that we've experienced around our hair?
Well, certainly there have been women, particularly in law firms, in airline work, you know, who have been discriminated, either not promoted or not offered the job because of the way they're wearing their hair. And so this is really affecting their livelihoods. Certainly it is affecting their mental health, as the senator mentions, but it's really, really impacting their wallets. And so I think what we're saying here is that people should have the choice. Their particular racial identity shouldn't dictate the kind of work that they can do, and it shouldn't limit them in terms of their possibilities, professionally or personally.
And Patrice, you say it's not just an American attitude. What can you tell us about your experience when you were growing up in Trinidad?
So yes, born in Trinidad and Tobago, and I mean, I've definitely seen stories about this throughout the years, especially there's so much discrimination against locks, you know, dreadlocks, as we've called it in the Caribbean traditionally, or braids, just the way that people traditionally have learned to style our hair. There's a Eurocentric standard that has been imposed, I think, across the diaspora, and it's something that we have to examine and try to root out ourselves.
A conversation that we could have all night, but I'm going to have to let you go because we are out of time. My thanks to Ava Thompson Greenwell, Senator Mike Simmons, and Patrice Grell-Yersick for joining us. Back with more Chicago Tonight Black Voices right after this.
When travel enthusiasts Siobhan Lanier and Cameron Stanton had their wanderlust stymied by the pandemic, they found ways to scratch that travel itch by hiking and camping in nearby parks and natural areas. But they noticed they were often the only Black people enjoying the great outdoors, so they started blazing their own trail on TikTok. This past summer, they gave us the last word on why they say it's time for Black people to take a hike.
Hi, I'm Chevy.
How you doing? I'm Cameron.
And we are Black People Outside.
This trail is not easy. We're making it fun though. Black People Outside.
Black People Outside started last year during the heart of the pandemic around August.
Look at this bay in the background.
I kind of tried to put together a little trip to the Grand Tetons / Yellowstone National Park. In that process, we were able to reignite our love for camping and the outdoors. Build fires, pitch tents.
I made a chili dog. We don't have any plates or anything.
We got good music though, we got good vibes.
We saw the Milky Way.
I started crying because I've never experienced something so immaculate and so beautiful before. And that was the moment I realized that we had to start Black People Outside, because I grew up watching the Discovery Channel, the Travel Channel, National Geographic, and there was no one that looked like us. And so I just kind of didn't think that it was for me, an inner city girl from Chicago.
This time around, we took a trip down to Oglesby, Illinois to check out Matheson State Park. Now I know gas is getting expensive, but just look at this waterfall. Just splash, gorgeous.
A lot of times you need to see someone doing it to know it can be done.
They're influencers for everything, like hair, clothes, makeup, and so we wanted to influence the great outdoors.
Hey y'all, Black People Outside, out here live enjoying nature.
We decided to call ourselves Black People Outside as a joke because we were just trying to make outside seem very accessible and fun, and to encourage other people like us to come out.
Sometimes you just need a place to get away, be with your thoughts, quiet down. You don't have to worry. You can just let loose in a sense and just take the world in.
There are plenty of ways that you can get outside via public transportation in the city. You can go to Jackson Park as we're standing here now. You can go to the Palos Trail system.
Take the yellow line out to Skokie, hit the Skokie Lagoons. Just find a local park. Get used to just being outside, and then you'll get tired of hearing the cars. You'll get tired of hearing the trains, and you'll want to try and venture off a little bit further. You start to hear the birds chirping. There are a lot more cuter animals outside than rats, so...
Southside Safari. We found us a little critter. Oh.
We're not pros, we're straight up amateurs.
Right.
We're from the city. We don't know what we're doing, and that was the basis of our channel.
What's good, y'all? She just finally made it up. She finally made it up the hill.
We be huffing and puffing.
It's just a struggle from time to time.
Our page is like the struggle page of nature.
This is Black People Outside. We were just lost for like the last, I don't know.
If you don't finish the hike, that's okay. Come back next week. You'll get a little further. It's really all about taking one step at a time. And it's really fun to walk up some dunes and you finally make it to that beautiful beach that you've been looking for. Black people outside.
We need to let people know that if you can find it, please use it. It is yours.
The outdoors are for everyone. That's what we always say.
Now you can follow Chevy and Cam on TikTok at black.people.outside. And you can watch more in our Last Word series on our website. Now, as conversations continue surrounding the Obama Presidential Center's potential displacement of some Southsiders, an Inglewood artist is making sure the neighborhood remains intact, even if it's through documentation of memories. I recently visited the Connect Gallery in Hyde Park to see a tribute to growing up on the South Side.
When you first walk into the exhibit, it's like a small homage to Dr. Wax, which was like an institutional record store for independent artists, because the people there would tell you what you needed to buy.
The Promontory Point, a mini arcade. These are just a few of the staples visitors see when walking into Mookie on the South Side.
Mookie on the South Side is a love letter to the South Side, talking about what did we wear, where did we go, what did we read, what people were important in our families. If you look at the images, you understand what the South Side is. They instantly connect and they get this feeling, this warmth. That's why I say it's like a love letter type thing of what it felt like, what it feels like, the togetherness of it, the unity of it.
This documentation of togetherness and unity is paralleled with Black Chicago experiences, from the street sign that reads common lingo to a piece that references Spike Lee displayed on a throw blanket you might have seen in your grandmother's living room growing up.
So text me when you get home. Tell me about this sculpture and how it is kind of reflective of Chicago's verbiage and lingo.
It's, really to show what the Chicago conversation is, but then also, to a point, talking about the danger of Chicago, where people are like, make it home safe. The Mookie on the South Side painting, which is like a guy referencing Do the Right Thing, and he's got the Italian Fiesta shirt on, which is super Chicago. In that painting, you see Rothschild liquor with like a broken, like a neon sign and kind of burnt out, kind of speaking about how Rothschild was in all the hood, but it really didn't do much in the sense of, positive things in the neighborhood. So it's that juxtaposition.
Amongst these harsh parallels also sit softer moments of adolescence. There's also tributes to community elders.
Looking at the relationships. So you have like Together, which is like a painting with an older, grandparent type figure and a grandmother, and he's like expressing his flowers to her on the porch. But then also it's a throw to Willie Ware and to Patrick Kelly as like the designers of a lot of the outfits and movies, but also like Black designers that inspired me when I found out they existed. And now as Black fashion design is like taking over everything, these are the forefathers. If you have a neighborhood like Woodlawn, where you had Herbie Hancock and Maya Angelou, all these people that have come through there, it's like we need that, to empower the youth to feel that they can do it, or create their own thing. I just really hope people, see the exhibit and see the beauty of the South Side, but see the beauty in the stories of the South Side, which I feel, need to be highlighted, way more.
Now, the exhibition closed late last month, but you can see more of those images on our website. And that's our show for this weekend. Be sure to check out our website, WTTW.com/news, for the very latest from WTTW News, including tips for celebrating the holidays safely amid a pandemic this year. And if you're watching us on Saturday night, know that you can also watch Black Voices and Latino Voices on Sundays beginning at 10 p.m. And join Brandis Friedman and Paris Schutz next week at 7 on Chicago Tonight. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, Black Voices, I'm Angel Ito. Thank you for sharing a part of your weekend with us. Stay healthy and safe. Good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm representing dozens of families in the crash of a Boeing 737 MAX 8 jet. Mr. Clifford is the lead counsel in litigation in federal court in Chicago.